Hey everyone, this is Phil, coming to you from one of those weird remote working booths in Omiya Station. So if you ever wanted to see what those are like, this is my little desk here. It is quite cramped. So anyway, this is a Surface Duo 2, but without the camera bump. So if you watched my previous video comparing the Surface Duo and the Duo 2, you will know that I preferred the OG Duo because of mostly the form factor. So that camera bump and the curved screen on the Surface Duo 2 was kind of a turnoff for me, and I didn't quite enjoy using it as much, especially since I often lie my Duo flat on the table to write on it and draw sometimes. The camera bump really got in the way of that. So I chose to go with the Duo 1. But then I saw people on Reddit talking about getting a Duo 2 for like $300 or something crazy like that. And it was cracked, but it still worked. So I got the stupid idea to try and pry it open and see if I can get that camera bump off it. And it worked. So let's go over how I did it, and I'll show you the whole procedure, and then we'll talk about how it actually works without the camera bump. But first, a disclaimer. I am not responsible for you ruining your Surface Duo 2 by taking it apart. Do not do this. It is very hacky. I did it on my own responsibility. I cannot take responsibility for what you do with your device. So this is not a tutorial. It is simply a description of what I did. Now we've got that out of the way. Let's go. Alright, you can see my little toolkit here. This is a toolkit that I bought specifically for working with smartphones a long time ago. I have previously taken phone backs off with these plastic prying tools. For example, I took off the back of my LG G6 and made it transparent. Based on a video that Zach from Jerry Rig Everything did. That was a lot of fun. So I figured the best way to get into this casing would be through that little gap that I think it's a speaker on the top there. And I hope I didn't ruin the speaker, but then again, I never use the speakers anyway, so it should be all right. And I actually had quite a hard time getting in there. So you can see at some point the plastic guitar pick type tools that I used would start to slide in there. I went all the way around looking for other weak parts in the seam, but this was the only one. If you do try this with any device, don't go in with a metal tool. You don't want to scratch anything. Go in with something that is weaker than the screen and hopefully the insides, like these plastic, soft plastic, like guitar picks. I figured that maybe I would have to heat it up with a dryer, but it wasn't actually necessary. So I was able to get in there and go all the way around with the guitar pick type opening tools. Yeah, and get the back off. It was actually much easier than I expected. And here you can see the disassembled plate. This is the camera part, or the bump, and that actually has metal backing on the inside. So it is assembled quite well. It is tight. There's no room in the seam, or I wasn't able to push it out very easily or anything like that. So there was still quite a bit of work to be done in the disassembly. So the camera is held down with several screws that have a Torx cutout. So it's not a hex cutout, it's Torx. And I tried with my 0.8 Torx first, but then I had to get my toolkit and find a different size because it didn't fit. It was too small. And I found out that a T3 Torx bit worked for these screws. So if you need to loosen these, a T3 is the way to go. And we'll just go in there really carefully because there is a bit of give, and it was honestly a bit scary to pry these loose. Fortunately, they weren't glued in or anything, so they just came right out. So once I went around the entire thing and took up those screws, I thought I was going to be able to lift it off, but then I found this little metal cover was still connected to the camera as well, so I had to take that off as well. And that actually covers the ports of the camera cables, which I have to say, these are much sturdier than the usual ribbon cables. They're actually really nice cables with a proper connector that comes right off. It's just pushed in, so you can lift it off really easily. And you can see that it has thermal paste on the back. So I'm thinking either the camera tends to get hot, or it actually works as a heat sink as well. So it actually dissipates the heat that comes from inside the phone from the screen, which is probably more likely. So first I just put a bit of electrical tape over the exposed contacts, and then I went over to the back plate, which didn't have any screws, obviously. This is glued together, and this actually proved to be the hardest part of the disassembly. So obviously, because this is metal glued to a glass plate, I was really scared of hurting the glass. So I went in with a really slim prying tool. This is a metal one because I knew I had to bend the metal a little bit. The plastic wasn't going to give me anything. And I tried to just push it out, but it was really solid because it's actually a wedged construction that goes in with that metal piece on the inside and then that glass and plastic piece on the outside. So I went in with those prying tools again, and then I just had to go in with the metal prying tool and just pry it apart, because I could feel there was still adhesive that actually turned out to be covering the entire front plate and gluing it to that metal part on the back. So this is glued together really well, and it's very annoying to pry it open because there's a lot of adhesive that you have to go through. You can see it's starting to come apart, but there's still a lot of adhesive on the inside that I first didn't realize. I thought it was just going to be the sides, like a frame around the thing, but it was the entire plate is gummy, and you really have to get in there. So I was really scared at this point of hurting the glass. But in the end it did come off. That's what the metal part looks like. And you can see it's really recessed to go into that camera bump. So it actually covers the entire camera bump from the inside. And then the front glass just came right off. and then that frame still remained. So I was curious if that was going to be a part of the metal, of the glass, but fortunately it was just stuck on there and fixed with the same glue that had held the other parts together. So now the glass is free, and fortunately it didn't splinter. You can see there's a little transparent bit, but that's only the backing. That's only like the paint covering on the back that had rubbed off a little bit, and it doesn't actually hurt anything. So I just went in with a marker and turned it black, and that's that. So you can see that fits right on there, and it now has a gaping hole. That was actually much deeper than I had anticipated. And then I tried to turn it on because I didn't know if it would even boot up without the camera, because that is a part of the hardware, and the system might know that there's something missing. But as you can see, it booted up just fine. Alright, now let's start filling that gaping hole in the back of the device. Alright, so the first thing I did was cover that back part and the thermal goo that was in there with a bit of an old smartphone actually. I had the NFC coil from my G6, and that was actually enclosed in like a carbon plastic type material that I figured would be good at insulating against electrical current and wouldn't be too weak against heat. So I used that to just cover the thermal goo, and then I started to look for something to just cover up that big old gaping hole that the camera assembly had left. And I thought I could just fill it with like a little electric tape, but it was far too deep for that. So what I did in the end, I did replace those metal covers for the ports, because I figured that would keep it a little more stable and prevent something from getting into the ports if that electrical tape did happen to slip. I figured maybe a good material to cover this is glass, because the backing is glass, so it might work. And that just had a very predictable outcome. As you can see, that attempt was abandoned very quickly. And what I did figure might be a good fit for this was an old circuit board that I had from an old SSD enclosure for small SSDs, because I figured the silicone would probably be resistant to the heat as well, and against the current as well, obviously. And obviously this is a part that didn't have any exposed circuits, and I did put electrical tape in between there as well. So now I'm going to peel off the adhesive from the backing and from the inside, because we're going to have to install new adhesive, obviously. And then I actually bought some new adhesive specifically for smartphone repairs. That is a strong adhesive, if the Amazon description was correct. And I just stuck that along the outside of the frame. I didn't do anything crazy. I did notice there was one part where it was a little thicker, so I just covered that, but otherwise I just did around the frame. so now the inside is all fixed up, and the backing is back on, and I am going to go ahead and install a debrand skin on this. You can see that scratch, or that crack on the front. It actually goes all the way down to the bottom. There's no pieces actually missing or anything, so that's fine. So I'm just gonna put that skin right over it. Put it flat, and I'll put it a bit on the back as well. And then cover the non-existent camera with the bit intended for it. I might actually look into getting a Duo 1 skin and see if that fits, because that doesn't have the cutout, so I could make it flush, and it would look nicer. I would just have to cut out the flash bit. Yeah, and you can see it turns on, it works fine, it doesn't close all the way. I flip back because of that skin, but perfectly serviceable. There you go. So, the first thing that you have to know about a Surface Duo 2 without the camera bump is, because I physically took out the entire camera module, the camera app does not work anymore. So normally you could bring up the camera app by double pressing the power button. You'll see it'll give me the camera dialog, and I'll select camera or Gcam or silent camera, whatever, and it will just crash. It just says keep stopping, and it is exactly the same if you use Gcam or third-party apps. This actually says your camera stopped responding. So it says your smartphone's camera function has crashed. It's recommended to restart your smartphone, but that's not going to do anything. So I will not. Oh wait, I actually just tapped outside the dialog, and it actually stayed in the app. Let's see what happens if I turn around. Your camera does not support this feature. Okay, yeah, so that's a bust. But I did find that when I went into Instagram, the story obviously goes to the selfie camera first, and that worked. And then I downloaded a bunch of different apps, tried out all the camera apps that I could think of, and I found that Lightroom, which has a RAW capable camera in it, actually works. So let's check that out. See, okay, got it, and it works, and it saved the picture, and everything working. Since the Lightroom app was now on this screen, I can use it the same as the original Duo, which is folded over. Double tap to use this screen, start up Lightroom, go into camera, and I have the camera open on the other screen, like a viewfinder. So, and interestingly, it's flipped. So that's something you can fix. You can just use a rotation control app. But either way, the stock app does not work. You will have to find some app that does work, like Lightroom. Other than that, it works well. So obviously it can now fold completely flat, and you can set it on the table. I like to give it kind of like a tent bend and then press it down on the table. That will put it exactly flat on the table without any rocking. And you can fold it over backwards, but at least with a skin on. I think this is the skin's fault. it will not close all the way, so hopefully you'll see that. Yeah, it kind of has a little way to go at the end, and it gets kind of springy because I think the thickness of the two skins on the inside pushing against each other prevent it from going all the way on that 360 hinge. But yeah, that's a minor misgiving, and as I said in my previous video, I don't use the phone mode very much. So I usually use it in two-sided mode anyways, so that's fine. Yeah, but that works exactly like I wanted it to. The camera thing is a minor gripe that I can live with, and I can put it flat on the table and write on it, which is perfect. If you noticed anything that I did the wrong way, or any suggestions you have for camera apps that maybe are compatible with the power buttons gesture that might allow the selfie camera to be the default, then put them in the comments. I hope this was entertaining. Again, it's not a tutorial for you to ruin your own device because these things are still expensive. 430 was still not cheap, and I'm very, very glad it worked out because otherwise I would have been out of a bunch of cash. But yeah, this worked out for me. I hope that Microsoft in the next iteration of this device goes with a flat back again, or something that can at least lie flat on the table, because that is much, much better to take notes and draw on than a tilted, rocky surface. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again. Man, this work booth is really not sound insulated as much as I hoped it would be. Not nearly. I can hear everything going on outside. This is annoying.